All right, I'm not going to lie here. I have made fun of my Catholic brethren over the years. I have debated with them about many things. But today, I'm going to tip my hat a bit and join them in one aspect of their view of Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was an amazing woman. I will be using, apart from the Bible, a book titled The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, right up here, by Alfred Edersheim, an Episcopalian minister of Jewish heritage. He wrote this book in 1883, and it's a harmony of the Gospels framed within the context of Jewish customs and culture. It's a fascinating reference, shedding light on many, many aspects of the Gospels. I'll be drawing primarily from chapter 6, the Nativity of Jesus the Messiah. Now, all biblical references will, unless otherwise specified, be from the Reformed Study Bible, 2005 copyright, published by Ligonier Ministries. I will be making use of one other resource, a most subjective one, and that's of my life experience as a husband, father, and a grandfather. I'm 62 years old, and I've seen a great deal of life. I do not feel badly about using my life observations, as human nature has never changed through the centuries. Yes, the culture of first century Israel is vastly different than 21st century America, but that's merely the external context. People still love. They still judge fairly and unfairly. People still marry. They divorce. They have children. Nothing is truly different. Folks are folks, as my father used to say. But every year it seems that God gives me one thought about Christmas to mull over and ponder. Several years back, it was about the importance of family. My mother and eldest brother had passed away within 2 weeks of each other, and those events brought into focus how important family was. That was then. This is the new year, and I've been thinking about the Christmas story. It's the Christmas season after all, and I've been thinking about Mary. So let's get to it. Now, here's the story. If you've ever seen any church Christmas pageant, you know the essence of the Christmas story. Gabriel, the angel messenger, appears to Mary, informing her that she, betrothed to a man named Joseph, would become pregnant, that God had chosen her. She would give birth to Messiah and calling him Jesus. You find this in Luke chapter 1, 26 through 33. Next, in most church pageants, Mary and Joseph trek to Bethlehem to answer the call of a Roman census, Bethlehem being their ancestral home. There's no room at the inn, so they end up in a stable where Mary gives birth to Jesus. Luke 2, 1 through 7. A host of angels then appear to shepherds, minding some flocks outside of Bethlehem, and they rush into Bethlehem, finding Mary, Joseph, and the new baby. They leave, telling their story to anyone who will listen. Luke 1, 15 through 20. Enter the Magi. The wise men from the east follow a star that leads them to Jesus. The three wise men present their gifts, leaving on camels. A choir sings Handel's Hallelujah chorus, or perhaps a chorus of Silent Night. The curtain drops on a thoughtful yet joyous Mary and Joseph and a few sheep. Another successful Christmas pageant is completed. But I'm cursed, or blessed if you will, with an inquisitive mind and an active imagination. As I've read the account of the Christmas birth of Messiah, the following questions have bubbled to the top. 1. Why does Mary immediately leave to visit Elizabeth after her chat with Gabriel? She'd just been visited by an angel. This is no little thing. In fact, the arrival of Gabriel to Elizabeth's husband in Luke 1, and later to Mary, also in Luke 1, signaled the end of 400 years, 400 silent years between God and Israel. God had not sent a prophet or an angel for 400 years. Certainly this young Jewish maiden would want to tell her family the news, or maybe not. Instead, she runs to Elizabeth. Why? My inquiring mind wants to know. 2. Why in the world would Joseph take a wife, 9 months pregnant, on a journey to Bethlehem? Especially, as Edersheim states in his book, that as Joseph's wife, she was not required to make the journey. All that was required was for Joseph to represent his family. Would it not have made more sense to leave Mary, about to deliver a baby, with his family in Nazareth? Because, see, in those days it was customary for a husband to bring his wife with him back to his family's home, where he is added on to his parents' home. So Mary could have stayed with her mother-in-law and had the baby there in the comfort and safety of home. So why did you do that, Joseph? Third question. Why was there no room for them in Bethlehem, especially for a woman ready to give birth? I know the simple answer was there was no room in the inn. Here goes my inquisitive little brain again. Excuse me, isn't Bethlehem their ancestral home? Is it that much of a stretch to think that surely some relative of Joseph or Mary, distant or close, lived in that area? From what I've discovered from Edersheim's book, familial hospitality was a very important part of that culture, and when family comes to town, room is found for them. And surely, room for a young mother-to-be could be found, right? Even if it's just a spot on the floor in front of a fireplace. But the answer to that question is no. There was no room for them at the inn. And obviously, but because of the fact that they ended up in a stable, there was no room for them anywhere, in anybody's home. Why? 4. Why didn't Joseph and Mary and Jesus return home immediately after the business was concluded? I mean, it doesn't take that long to register for a census. After Jesus is born, shepherds show up, the Magi. But what needs to be realized here is that there is between 1 and 2 years gap between the visits of the shepherds and the Magi. Now this can be inferred from the cunning ways of Herod, who inquired of the Magi when they visited him looking for the King of the Jews. Based on the information provided, it appears Joseph and Mary were still in Bethlehem 1 to 2 years after the birth of Jesus. So, why didn't they just go back to Nazareth? Surely it doesn't take 1 to 2 years to register for the census. And after the Magi visit and depart, Joseph is warned in a dream, by the angel again, that Herod is going to do the unthinkable, to try to kill Mary's child. So he takes his new family and flees. Back to home? Nope. He went to Egypt. So for another length of time, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus stay away from their hometown of Nazareth. Why? And one last question. This one deals with the other end of the story of Jesus and Mary. In John's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 26 and 27, while on the cross, Jesus gives his mother Mary into the care of his beloved disciple John. Wow. What a scene. But here's the elephant in the room for me. Where were Jesus' siblings? Joseph and Mary, by my reading the New Testament, had other children together. He had half-brothers, James for one. Where were they? Now, in deference to my Catholic brothers and sisters, they are correct in the sense that sometimes cousins are referred to as brothers. Sometimes the line is blurred between are they cousin, are they brother. But the New Testament, I take it literally when it says he had brothers, James, the brother of Jesus. Where were they? But even if they were just cousins, where were they? Why was Mary the only member of Jesus' family at the cross? What could have possibly happened to this family where the eldest brother could not expect his younger brothers or relatives to care for their mother? Why does Jesus have to give care of his mother to anyone other than the next eldest sibling in the family? Because that was the custom. So these 5 questions bounce around inside my head. And the New Testament doesn't give all the answers. So, we can gather a lot of information from the Bible, but then we have to rely on what we know about human nature. And this is where my personal experience enters into the puzzle here. This is conjecture. This isn't something that, this isn't a mountain I would stand on and fight. But I'm pretty confident that I'm on the track of something good here. So, here are my ruminations, if you will. The key to this whole discussion is found in the sentence in Matthew 1:18. Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child. Now, Mary is likely between 14 and 16 years of age, per customs of that day for betrothals. Here is where I draw on my personal life experiences to look at the first question. I draw on my life experiences as a father, husband, and a teacher of middle school, high school students. Move past the enormity of the angelic visitation for a moment, and let's visit the humanity of Mary's new situation. I can just picture, in my imagination, after the conversation with Gabriel, after Gabriel's left, I can see in my mind's eye she just sits down abruptly. She's pregnant. Joseph's not the father. And this is in a time when adultery could be punished by stoning. For instance, look at John's Gospel in chapter 8. At this very moment, I'm envisioning one of my 15-year-old female students and what she would do were she to find herself pregnant. Who could she tell? Who would she tell? Probably not her father at first. As a father of a daughter, now grown, were I to have found out that she was a pregnant 14 or 15-year-old, I doubt if the initial conversation would have been a pleasant one. No, I'm fairly certain I would not have been my daughter's first stop. Perhaps a mother? Perhaps. At the very least, it would probably most likely be another woman. In my experience as a father, husband, and teacher, I've found that when a woman experiences a traumatic event, and trust me, a 14-year-old girl discovering she's pregnant, that's a traumatic event. Many times they seek the company of another understanding woman. And that's what Mary does. She immediately leaves to visit her older relative Elizabeth, who herself is experiencing a miracle birth of her own. Now, if anyone would understand this whole angelic visitation thing, it would be Elizabeth. And I have no doubt Mary would want advice about how to navigate the deep water she now found herself in. An engaged woman, carrying a child, whose father is someone other than her betrothed, Joseph. This brings a little bit of sense to my first question as to why Mary rushed off to Elizabeth. She needed a confidant, perhaps. She would have wanted confirmation that she wasn't losing her mind about Gabriel and his message. And she was probably more than a little fearful of what the future would hold. She had to know that when the word got out about her being pregnant, her life would change forever, and probably not for the better. So, Mary goes to Elizabeth in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. Look at Luke chapter 1, verse 56 or so. Staying for approximately 3 months before returning home. 3 months pregnant. Now this marks the beginning of the new reality for Mary. I don't know if she told Joseph first, or if her parents found out, or if she told her parents, then Joseph. The gospel narrative is silent here. But no matter how it happened, from an outsider's perspective, she runs off to visit a relative and returns 3 months later, pregnant. Now, I put on my cap as a father. I know my first question would be as her father, who is the father of this child? What could she say? God? Nobody had heard from God for 400 years. There was no prophet who could validate or examine her story. Her only options were to tell the truth, which no one would believe, or to say nothing, which would only provide fodder for speculation and gossip, or to lie, perhaps saying she had been raped. I don't picture her lying. Her integrity is mentioned by Gabriel. It leads me to believe that lying was not part of this picture. So she had 2 options: say nothing or speak the truth. In any case, Mary was doomed. And as she was, for all intents and purposes, the wife of Joseph, her fate was in Joseph's hands. And I wonder if this is the reason no mention is made of Mary's family in the story, because the shame her pregnancy would bring in her family would be great. I cannot help but wonder if their reaction to her pregnancy was less than forgiving. I don't know. But again, my fertile imagination can easily imagine the tension in that household. Which leads us to Joseph and his response. In Matthew chapter 1, 19 and 20, we learn a few things. Joseph was a just man, a good man. He was not willing to put her to shame, in other words, make a public spectacle of her parents' shameful activities. He was afraid to take her as his wife until Gabriel appeared to him, informing him of the truth of the matter, that she had been faithful to him. She was still a virgin. Now, that made Joseph willing to take her as his wife in spite of the pregnancy. This is probably more than fine with her family, because that would make her Joseph's problem and remove her from her family circle. So, immediately after Gabriel's visit with Joseph, Joseph and Mary became husband and wife. All right, next question. Why did Joseph take his wife 9 months pregnant on the trip to Bethlehem? By the time she's 9 months pregnant, the call for the census comes out, and Joseph and Mary hop on their way to go to Bethlehem. Why did Joseph do that? Mary was pregnant, 9 months, ready to give birth to somebody else's child. Now, according to Edersheim, she could have stayed home, letting Joseph represent her in the census. But what would life have been like for Mary at home without Joseph to protect her? Her own family was ashamed of her activities. Joseph's family, by virtue of the fact that he had married Mary, who was pregnant when they got married, they would be shamed as well. It makes perfect sense for a husband to want to protect his wife, so Mary accompanies Joseph to Bethlehem rather than be left alone with perhaps an angry or vindictive mother-in-law. 9 months pregnant, off to Bethlehem. Which leads me to the next really troubling question I'd had over the years. Why was there no room at the inn? The quick answer is, the town is crowded, all rooms were taken. Got it. But here's once more, we have to look a little deeper. In that culture and in that time, if a relative came to town and needed a place to stay, you made room for them. If all you had to offer was a place on the floor to spread their sleeping mats, so be it. Bethlehem was the ancestral town for the lineage of David. Joseph and Mary were both of the lineage of David. There had to have been relatives, distant or close, in and around that city. And yet, Joseph and Mary end up in a stable. They could find no room. Why? Because she was pregnant with a child that was not Joseph's. So think about this timeline a minute. Mary returns from her visit with Elizabeth, 3 months pregnant. Sometime between then and the trip to Bethlehem, approximately 6 months, Joseph marries her. That 6-month window would provide plenty of time for word to spread about Mary and her condition. You have to at least concede the possibility that one reason for their having to stay in a stable could have been the shame, again, the shame attached to Mary and Joseph. There's nothing so devastating or viral as gossip and innuendo. All the world knew was that she had slept with someone other than Joseph and was carrying somebody else's child. That's all the world knew. They're not going to believe the God story. So the shepherds come, the shepherds go. Between 1 and 2 years later, the Magi show up. Wait, back up a second. Why are Joseph and Mary and Jesus still in Bethlehem 1 to 2 years later? Surely it doesn't take 1 to 2 years to get registered. Why didn't they return to Nazareth? Perhaps for the same reason that Joseph took Mary away from Nazareth in the first place. Life for them in Nazareth would not have been good for them. The wounds were still fresh. Joseph and Mary knew the truth, but to everyone else, Jesus was the bastard son of a Roman soldier and a Jewish maid. So after the Magi depart, Joseph and his family flee to Egypt for a time to escape the wrath of Herod. Now when they hear of Herod dying, they wanted to settle in Judea, but as Herod's son was ruling there, Joseph took Mary and Jesus back to Nazareth. But now it had been 3 to 5 years since they'd left. Perhaps things had just chilled out a little bit. Maybe enough so it would at least be tolerable for Mary. Now, jump forward 30 years. Jesus has grown up, he's at the end of his ministry, and he's being crucified. At the foot of the cross is Mary, his mother, several of his disciples. Jesus indicates John and tells Mary, "Behold your son." He then tells John, "Son, behold your mother." Where were the other members of Jesus' family? Well, Joseph, who is significantly older than Mary, he was probably passed away. Protestant tradition has Mary and Joseph having other children. James, the brother of Jesus, is mentioned later on in the New Testament. My Catholic brothers and sisters say that that's very possible that James was a cousin and not a brother of Jesus. That's fine. I won't split hairs there. But they were close enough. Why weren't they there to support Mary while her firstborn son was being crucified? Why weren't any of them stepping forward to take care of Mary as Jesus died? Is it possible that after the family returned to Nazareth, these other children grew up there, that they began to learn, quote, learn the truth about Mary and Jesus? Is it possible that their relationship with Mary was strained in later years because of all that? So much so that when their eldest half-brother Jesus was being crucified, they stayed away from that shameful event? Is it at least plausible that over the years they distanced themselves from Mary because of her sordid past and the illegitimate older brother? Jesus apparently knew none of them were going to step up and take care of Mary after he was gone. So do you get it? Do you see why my admiration of Mary has grown so much this last years? As I've pondered all of this, Mary had to have had an idea of what she was getting herself into when she said yes to Gabriel. And yet she said, "Behold, I'm a servant of the Lord. Let it be done to me according to your word." God called her to an incredible adventure. She paid an incredible price. Mary was an incredible young lady. The centerpiece of Christmas is indeed the birth of our Savior, as it should be, but Mary deserves a place of honor as well. This Protestant will indeed be thinking of Mary this holiday season. The mother of our Lord sacrificed all to walk in obedience to God for the rest of her life. May it be possible that I have a fraction of the courage of this young Jewish maiden named Mary, and the strength of character that she exhibited when God calls me to my next adventure. Merry Christmas.